Good morning, everybody. It's the 24th of April 2022. It's Michael here with the latest supply and demand market reports. I hope you're all well and that you've had a good trading week. We're just going to do what we normally do, which is go through the markets we have. I've added silver in today by popular request. So if you have any markets you'd like me to start looking at in these videos going forward, just email me. The contact details are on your screen, storehouseanalytics@gmail.com. So I'm hoping I'm not gonna do as long a video as I did last week, but we'll see how we get. We're going to review the weekly charts like we always do and look at what we started looking at together last week and see where the markets have gotten to in the last week. So let's get going. Just a reminder that this is purely for information purposes and entertainment purposes. It is not a solicitation to buy or sell anything. I'm not a financial advisor. This is just a video expressing my thoughts on what I see in the markets. Okay, so this is the dollar index on the weekly chart, and we were here last week. So we've had a full week of trading where the dollar tried to go down and then ended up closing up fairly strong for the week. We are still up into these areas that we talked about last week. For those of you who've not watched last week's video, it's on the channel, so please just go in there and have a look at it so it can build a story for you, so to speak. Okay, but we haven't reached the extreme just yet, and it looks like the market is trying to get there. It is getting quite extended. As you can see, we continue to move up, not really going below previous weeks after we've built this base here. So this is still the demand zone that we will need to keep an eye out on if prices do pull back. As we said last week, we want to be watching this area, not necessarily taking a trade there if nothing sets up, but we will be watching it on smaller time frames when prices get up there to see if there's any action that needs to be taken, because we are in a big range, and for supply and demand practitioners, we will all know that when we're trading in a big range like this, until we break out, it's always a case of looking for selling opportunities when we're high in that range and looking for buying opportunities when we're low down in that range. Currently, obviously, we are getting to near the high of that range. And if I take you out to the monthly chart, you'll see what that looks like. That's that whole range right there on the monthly. We have supply just above us there on the monthly, so a breakout will have that to deal with. The fact that we've had this period of basing below is interesting because we will have formed new levels below here. There are several of them. I'll just combine these two. These are on really big time frames, so it's not like it's going to happen tomorrow, but these will be the levels if you were looking further out on a bigger time frame. But for the weekly, this is what we've got. These two levels previously tested, quite seriously tested. It's gone beyond 50% into that level, so that's why it's not advisable, I should say, blindly going into this level. If and when prices get there, to start looking for selling opportunities, probably safer to wait to see if the sellers show up again here, and you'll see that on the smaller time frames. Okay, and the opposite will be for the euro, which we talked about last week. So we were talking about this level. It's still not fully formed yet. The move away is not big enough yet, but it looks like it's forming, but until it does, it hasn't. So we have the levels below here. In fact, if you wanted, you could expand it to this if you like, because that's where the origin of the big move started from. Prices tried to get back down there, but just missed it, and we're still coming down on the euro. We'll see how this week pans out. We did make an attempt last week, got above the previous week's highs, as you will see here, but then again we got smacked back down and closed a bit negative for the week. So sellers are still very much in control in this market. We are coming down to levels and areas where there might be interested buyers because it's moved down so much. How much is too much is not, it's something nobody can ever ascertain, but not the place to be initiating new shorts is the one thing that I can say about it. I'd rather we have a rally before getting down to this level, after a significant area has been created, which this area just doesn't qualify right now because the move away isn't big enough. So not so much to do yet in either the dollar or the euro for me. And bear in mind, the dollar index is a basket of, it was done so many years ago, it doesn't really reflect the trading partners the US has right now. So you might want to think about creating your own dollar index with equal weighting for the pound and the euro and the Aussie and the New Zealand, the majors if you like, with a sprinkling of some of the more exotics like the Mexican peso, who are a significant trading partner. Mexico is a significant trading partner for the US, and equally weight them, easily done on TradingView, just to give you a sense of what the dollar is actually doing against those majors and also its trading partners. Just a little tip there. And for the pound, so the pound was interesting. Last week we were sitting at this level, as you'll see the arrows we had in there, and we were wondering whether this was going to be an area to cause a bounce because it's demand. But as you can see, the trend has continued to be powerful, and this is why I say to particularly newer supply and demand traders, yes, you will find demand zones when prices are moving down, but you don't necessarily want to be going in and just putting in a buy order at an embedded zone on a smaller time frame inside this level. It's a frustrating way to trade supply and demand. You will occasionally get the bottom tick, and it'll make you feel really good, and you'll think supply and demand is the best thing, and you become a proselyte and preach it around the world on social media and all that. And there will be opportunities that will come along like that you will get the bottom, but there will also be things like this where the trend just keeps being quite strong, even though you have prices reaching into demand. And if you go and look again at last week's videos, we talked about this momentum line at the time, and that being the supply level that we were watching. Prices never actually made it up there. It was so weak that prices didn't make it up there. And we are looking at this now. If you were updating your momentum lines as the week progressed, you would have updated yours to look something like that. So let me have a look. So actually, no, it would still say the same actually until this level happened, in which case this will be the new updated one. This will be the new updated one. But until this peak was created, it would have been these two up here, because those were the two that this one led to a new low, and that was the one just above it. So that the old one we had there would have been the correct one. But now you can see the flush. What is interesting though is that this is the largest candle in sight for a long time, maybe apart from this one up here. This often tends to preempt a sort of capitulative move. It's interesting that after a significant move down is when you're getting one of the biggest candles. So that's something to note and to watch out for. But let's go take a look at what's below us. Well, the only sort of area you might even want to consider, it's not the strongest at all by any means, but it's down there, and there's one just below it. Again, those are areas where you will want to look on a smaller time frame and be mindful of the kind of trade you're taking. As you'll recall in last week's video, I said probably not to have these trades be a significant proportion of your trades, of the trades you take, because it is going against a strong trend. You will be looking to try to catch near or at the exact bottom, which is not really ideal. Better to look for zones to go with the trend if you get a rally up. and doing the same thing over there, not just setting an order to sell in an embedded zone in here, because with this kind of move, for example, we do not know if this zone will hold. It might be that this is the last hurrah for the sellers, and then you start getting more significant buying. If it was more up here, it'd probably be more ideal, because you would have had bigger room to go in terms of profit margin. But right now, this level is closer to potential areas of significant demand after a significant move down. So trends persist is the positive side of this trade. So watch those two levels. They're the two that are pitched against each other right now for short-term income trading. Note also that you are likely to have broken this downside momentum line depending on the way you return back to this supply zone. If prices hold at this level or the lower level, watch and see if the momentum lines continue to hold. If they start breaking, you're entering into sideways territory. Never ideal, unless they're big ranges and you can trade the selling high and buying low, like we talked about in the dollar index. Okay, New Zealand US. So New Zealand US again. Let's go back to the weekly there. So again, continues to move off of that supply zone. It's in a range. It took out supply here, went up to the next one, and it's just had a continued move down. We have these levels below that have been tested. You could tighten this level up to like so. This area is the area that caused the removal of that area. It also was brought about by a move off of these lows. You see the lows in that region, but the move away was not the greatest at all. The move away from there, even though it was the low, and you can see last hurrah type of candle and immediately taken back up, just what we were talking about in the pound just now. Just watch for those type of things. Is it advisable to try and get a buy as prices are coming down in here? Probably not. Could you go down to the daily like we did last week and start to draw momentum lines and look at supply zones if and when they form to see if those hold? Absolutely. So we were talking last week, I think we were saying this is a potential level. Again, you see the power of trend. Prices pulling back. Yes, you got a bounce, but ultimately went through it. And that's not, this was the level we were saying last week that we should watch out for. You can watch the video. It's all time stamped. It's on the channel. So this was all done beforehand, and you can see how prices came right back to that level, and that was the trade of the week. Okay, so for now in the pound, it's a watch and see. I'm just going to take off these lines. So it's just a watch and see as prices continue to go down, watching to see what happens when we get down to those lower levels, see if we have a change in trend or that the trend continues further down. It's getting more and more challenging to put on a trade, a short trade, but it's still possible. It's still possible because we're not quite down low yet. Definitely nowhere near these areas. Okay. All right, the Aussie US, excuse the writing on it. These were just notes I used to make some points on the Forex Factory thread, trading institutional order flow thread that I make my comments and sort of blog on forexfactory.com. So I was just making the point to some of my fellow traders in there about these zones in here. But looking at it from the weekly again, just going to take these out so that we can have a clearer view. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so again, poked above these two peaks, it's gone above them after it double bottomed in this area. Big zone, two levels in here that you could actually draw. We've just combined the two of them, and it's gone up, taken out the highs, we're now beginning to pull back. So again, this area will be the area to watch lower down into this range. We didn't quite make it into the upper range. It should have been ideal to be looking for a short, given we're still in a big sort of bigger time frame range here, but we didn't get there. We just took out some stops here, and they are currently the ones that are trapped. So quickly, just looking at the daily chart, nothing pops out. I know you can all see this level. I'm not so sure I'm going to be trading that again, because of the power of the trend, because of the momentum that we see, the aggressiveness of the selling. I'm not so sure I'm going to be placing any. In fact, I know I'm not. I'm going to be playing this level. I will be watching it to see how it pans out, but I'll be looking to see on smaller time frames if there are any areas, and there are. I'd probably be choosing something like that to try and go short rather than play the long, just for the reasons that I've just mentioned. Okay, let's go to the indices. We'll do the S&P. For some reason the NZDUSD isn't here. I should put that next week. So S&P 500, big selling this week. Big selling again. It's an outside week. We had the high of last week taken out, slammed down really hard. We don't have any fresh levels below us until we start getting into these areas, but it's still a big range. We are still caught in there, and the selling is happening in the background for sure. And you can see that if you go again to the videos, I've posted this on the forexfactory.com blog, Trading Institutional Order Flow. We talked about this supply level just last week, and that's where prices got to on Thursday, and we had the big sell-off, which was quite profitable on the NASDAQ for us, which is why I was wondering why the NASDAQ wasn't there. I traded the NASDAQ all week, and it was very nice week for us. So that's what we've got now. Right now, I don't see any levels to participate. I'm sure new levels will form. I'm not looking for buys in the indices. I can tell you that for sure. There's quite a lot of volatility, and the majority of the big moves are to the downside. So whilst we're in this range, I'm really not looking for long-term buys, so to speak. Intraday, there might be bounces that are tradable, but in the medium to long term, definitely not. Okay. In the Aussie, we were talking last week about prices reaching this level, and I was saying that demand was still holding. That was that rally-based rally demand zone, as you can see. And we were saying we hadn't seen any evidence that, even though we were into weekly supply, as you can see here, that we hadn't seen any evidence as of last week when we did the video of sellers coming into this market. Well, what happened? What happened was we had a shakeout of buyers. People who were trying to buy the breakout got trapped, and that's when the selling came in. All of that basing trapped them as with prices moved out really strong actually, but then stopped right in their tracks, and Thursday and Friday saw really strong sell-offs with the main markets in the US as well. But for now, we are now down into a potential area where you might find buyers for a bounce. This thesis that we were talking about last week, of where we get the sellers coming in and potential bounce and then looking for selling opportunities to try and come further down, is what we're going to still be looking at in this market. And for now, this is the supply area that we will be looking at to have that happen. Okay. The Nikkei also going to the weekly chart. We talked about it beginning to react off of this weekly supply, and that being the weekly demand that was in control as of last week. It still is the weekly demand. It took out that supply level. Prices have rallied into it and continued to fall. Doing your multiple time frame analysis, it created a nice level that prices then rallied into this week. I hope people saw this and took it it was fairly obvious, and I hope it worked out for you all. Okay, but for now, there's nothing to do. It's in between levels, as you can see, so it's not really an ideal location to be trading in the middle, as we know. So we're just watching for new levels to form as we continue to go down. By the time we're starting to get down into these areas, any profits on any shorts will be, pruned off or taken off entirely. I'm looking to see if that creates a bit of a bounce that may have the opportunity for a potential short again if we have quality supply above. Okay, given that the indices are struggling and we are working off of weekly supply in this market, so bear that in mind. We have seen distribution, a big top in this whole area. I'm just going to put a circle in this whole area here. This whole area here is a distributive top, at least for now, until we can get on the other side of it to the upside. This is likely to be the top that will then cause further moves down in this market. All right. Okay, let's go to Europe. We'll go to Germany. Again, see that distributive top I was just talking about. This is the kind of pattern we see. It's made it to these highs and just stalled there for several months, even maybe over a year, a couple of years now. And then it's starting to go down. Similar picture, created a bit of supply, not the greatest quality at all, previously tested, came up to it again, and then you had a bigger, stronger move away from it. But for now, watching for new levels to be created to the downside. The upside is doesn't really have much room to go. There will be bounces for sure, but in terms of how far it can go, it has to work through a lot of supply overhead. So nothing to do there either. And in the UK, we talked about this supply zone last week. Prices continue to hold into that level. It's one of the stronger indices out there, obviously, compared to the US market or even the German one, as we've seen. There's still potential. If this starts going, there's potential room to come all the way down here. If it does come down, it's not in the ideal location, like we said last week, to be initiating new long positions. And you can see the distribution that has gone on since prices got to that level. We still need, though, to give the sellers a bit more confidence. We still need to take out all of that demand. And then you'll see it's more likely to have a stronger move to the downside after that. But for now, nothing quite yet to do either. And the natural gas market. We talked about this supply level last week. It was a level on top of level, if you'll recall from the previous video. And prices were sitting into the upper one as of last week. Well, look at what happened. Remember, we were talking about it is possible to take this trade, but like I keep saying, probably not ideal if you're new or even an intermediate level practitioner to make these kinds of corrective trades a significant proportion of your trades. You see the scenario we were talking about last week where you could potentially get a pullback. The idea would be trying to join this uptrend with the potential of, if you're able to understand the multiple time frame view, to see if you could get a short, understanding that it could be short-lived and you should be managing it differently than, say, you would manage this long trade. Well, on the daily chart, you can see what happened. It went really parabolic. We had to push up really deep into that level before we saw the sellers coming in. Now we are beginning to create potential supply right at this level. It's not done yet. It's not set yet. It still needs a bit of a bigger move away, in my view. And we'll then see if it continues down. If it makes a slightly bigger move and then rallies up, could be a potential for someone who's trading for daily income to use this as an area to try and take this trade closer to this area. That's a possibility. But remember what we said, it's a corrective trade. It needs to be managed and even set up differently, whether it's position sizing or where the stops are, or the size of them, all of those kinds of things, where you take your profits, that kind of stuff. So just be mindful of that. So I'm going to go on to crude oil. Crude oil is still hanging in there. The impulse trade is still trying to see if it can continue this trend, which has been quite strong. Had a bit of a small week in terms of trading range, and if we look at it on the daily, you can see that's Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday. So not significantly large movements. I didn't trade this market at all this week, so because it just wasn't setting up right for me. And we are still seeing, if you draw the traditional trend lines, we're still seeing a market that is now trying to go into a range, ending the move. You can see the high there, the low, the lower high, the lower low, and it's now a question of, will this still carry you to new lows, or will you end up, with a bit of back and forth in this sort of area for a while? Time will tell. For now, nothing to do. Gold had a rough week, very rough week. Tried to break out, trapped buyers up there, and then went all the way below the low of the week before. So this is still a market in a range, still trying to decide what direction to go in. It's also trying to form potential supply. It's not yet formed, but we do have, remember we talked about this level, and last week I was thinking, I'm not sure this level will hold. Well, guess what? It did. It's still in a range, and I was saying this is the area we want to look at to see if we are going to start looking for buys in this market. Well, what has set up is, if we are going to get a buy in this market down in here, this is an area that you would want to be removed before you can confidently say, yeah, I'm going to start looking for buying opportunities. So there's going to be, as always, as we say to people who are relatively new to trading, patience is the biggest part of this game. Yes, we have an area of demand that we said we want to be interested in, but we also now know that we have potential sellers above. Even though it's not a zone we want to use to initiate a short, we know there are sellers up there. So the question is, will the buyers down here be strong enough to remove the selling up there, to create the sort of free path, free way for you to be able to then start looking for longs to go to higher levels? So patience and watching and observing, making sure you keep them on your radar is what I would suggest. And silver had a probably even worse week. It's similar picture, trapped the buyers to the upside and went way lower than the week before. It is still dealing with that. We still have it in a range ultimately. So now it's again, will the buyers step up? Will they step up? This is what we're dealing with. This was all of last week. You can see day after day after day just going down. So will the buyers show up somewhere in this range between the two black lines to say enough is enough and try and take this back up? Time will tell. Right now, this is the level that they will have to deal with. It's not the greatest for selling short, because you can see it's still in all of this range. It's not ideal, and you have some more above it, obviously. If you start getting buyers holding here, for now, as of today, unless we create a lower supply zone, this would be the area you want to see them at least take out. They will have trouble immediately as well here, but at least take this one out, maybe create a demand zone that any sellers in here will have to work against as well. So they're all watching markets right now, just waiting and seeing what happens. Okay. And corn is still up into the weekly supply. We talked about this level last week. You can see this week, which is this candle, it came up there and it found some selling. It hasn't changed anything, hasn't changed the trend, it hasn't changed the momentum, but it did find sellers up into this area like we were observing last week. So we'll see what happens when prices are now testing into the most recent demand zone in here. Let's see, you could even draw it like that if you wanted. Now let's see if the sellers are enough. Right now there isn't that much aggression being shown by sellers, but let's see if the aggression does come in and they start taking out this demand zones. For now, nothing. Is this a quality demand zone to use to try and join this uptrend? Maybe not. Why? Because it is too high and too close to the supply zone. So that's why I would say not the ideal level to be using. Okay. Alright guys, that's all I've got. So just remind, if you had any questions, if you're still interested in the video course, if you wanted the video course, just email me at storehouseanalytics@gmail.com. a few of you already have. Like I said, I'm giving it away. It's $100. It's not that expensive. If you wanted to learn the basics, it'll help you. And if you're interested in one-to-one sessions with me, going through the methodology, if before or after you've watched the videos, again, storehouseanalytics@gmail.com is where to find me. I will continue to post my thoughts and answer some questions on the forexfactory.com thread, which is called Trading Institutional Order Flow. So I look forward to seeing you all next week again. Take care, everybody. Trade well and trade safe. Bye for now.